Hello again, everyone. Welcome to an all-new episode of that Star Trek podcast. My name is Sean Ray, and this is the show that knows that the real reason we don't see Mr. Mott anymore is because everyone realized that they could visit a barbershop in the holodeck and they don't have to listen to his stories. Joining me tonight on the show, we have Scott. How's it going, sir?
I'll let you know in 6 hours.
And Rick is here as well.
Anybody want an omelet?
We're going to talk about that. All right, we're continuing our time travel series. We're taking a look at every episode and film in the Star Trek universe that uses time travel as a plot device. Tonight, we're finally venturing into the 24th century with our first episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. We will be reviewing season 2, episode 13, which was titled Time Squared. It was written by Kurt Michael Bensmiller and Maurice Hurley, directed by Joseph L. Scanlon, and the original air date was April 1st, 1989. The Enterprise comes across its own shuttlecraft adrift in space, a duplicate with an unconscious duplicate of Captain Picard inside. So I've said many times that the first 2 seasons of The Next Generation are not really my favorite. However, I did notice that when I rewatched the entire series a year or so ago, that I used to think the show got better in the 3rd season, but I really think that the show started to get better in like the second half of the 2nd season, because there's some in the later 2nd season episodes. There's some pretty good stuff there, but. This episode, Time Squared, is not among my favorite episodes of The Next Generation, but it's a good bottle episode. You know, it's time travel, but the time traveler comes to us instead of us going to it. It's all completely encased in the Enterprise, and there's no guest stars on the episode, so it's a bottle episode. But it's a good one. It's a decent episode, I think. Rick, what do you think? You're shaking your head.
Okay, a lot of times, Babylon 5, for example, when I go back, for years, I told people Babylon 5 is a good show, but season 1 is kind of rough. And then I went back and watched season 1, and it was like, no, it wasn't that bad at all. The first few episodes were a little rocky and stuff, but, I didn't, this guy that played Sinclair, I forget his name.
Sinclair, Michael O'Hare.
Michael O'Hare. Yeah, he was not as bad as I had remembered him being as an actor. He wasn't great, but he wasn't awful. And especially knowing, anyway, not the point. Don't go down that rabbit hole. The point is, when I went back and rewatched Babylon 5, it turned out that it was worse in my memory than it actually was. Seasons 1.5 of TNG do not fall into that category for me. And this episode is terrible, in my opinion. Okay. The title has a whole new meaning for me because it felt like it was twice as long as it actually was. A lot of Star Trek shows, especially the ones where there's a puzzle that you've got to figure out, to me, don't really hold up to multiple viewings, because once you know the answer, it's like, get on with it, get to it, go, it's a rare one to me. I think Conundrum is one that works. And what's the one with the repeating?
Cause and effect.
Cause and effect. That one works too. This one, to me, does not.
Okay. All right. Scott, what about you?
I always found it to be an interesting episode. I think doubly so for me because the first many times that I saw this episode, I was too young to really understand what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
I couldn't follow what they were trying to do because at that point I was 9. Yeah. So I wasn't following the story. I just, there's 2 Picards. One of them looks unhappy. But then the other things that I could latch on to, like the breakfast scene, it was funny. Excuse me. And I could, I was still at least old enough to realize That's more than one egg that he's working with. And why are they all drinking beer with breakfast? And then when they're trying to get the shuttlecraft back online, and some of the facial expressions that Data makes as they're having trouble are just hilarious because they are so not Data.
Yeah,
but you roll with it because it's fine. It's fun. It's whatever. But sure, as I get older and I start to understand the story a little bit more, I realize, okay, not all of the decisions being made in this episode are making sense. And they probably could have spent more time explaining why Prime Picard is so bothered by the presence of future Picard, like unreasonably bothered by the presence of this duplicate. I think whoever wrote the script, they weren't really thinking that through. I think they just wanted Picard to be upset, but they did not do a great job of laying out why.
Yeah. I mean, I know what they were trying to say was that he was upset that if this Picard was him, then it meant that he was going to leave the ship when the ship was in trouble. Mm-hmm. And
he was preemptively feeling guilty for letting his crew die and being the survivor.
Yeah.
Except he was being an asshole before they figured that out.
Yeah. That's very, very true. Exactly true. So, not perfect. Again, not perfect, but interesting enough to keep me watching. Now, I'm curious if anyone else has ever taken this approach to future Picard. Do you guys, assuming that it is a time loop situation where Picard gets in the shuttle and he leaves, the Enterprise is destroyed and he's thrown back in time and he shows up, and then is it Prime Picard always gets into the shuttle and leaves, or is it the first Picard to go through that time vortex and he just continually gets into the shuttle and goes over and over and over again?
I think it was the same Picard leaving every time. Because,
okay, so this Picard that we see who shows up in the shuttle unconscious, you think he's already done this several dozen times of watching the Enterprise get destroyed, trying to get it right, and he keeps repeating this over and over again? Or is it a fresh Picard every loop?
Rick's shaking his head.
I didn't get a loop feel from this episode at all. This felt like it happened once.
Well, no, because I mean, Picard said all right, we're skipping to the end, but when he kills that Picard, he says that he's doing it because he has to stop the chain.
And he says the cycle must end.
Yeah, the cycle must end.
But it wasn't like in Cause and Effect where there was an end and then we reset. See, that's one of the reasons I dislike this episode is when he kills the other Picard, it makes no sense whatsoever for him to do that. There was no reason for him to kill Picard.
Yeah, there was that seemed like shock for the sake of shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he could have just stunned him. He could have just stunned him, and it would have
just done nothing and left and gone and done. Killing the other Picard had no bearing on the story whatsoever.
Yeah, he could have left him in sickbay.
Yeah.
And Riker is an absolute moron in most of this episode. They see the Elbaz on the view screen, and nobody goes, "That's our shuttle." How do you know? It says it on the side.
Yeah, they don't read it until it gets in the shuttle.
Now, I will give them credit. I liked seeing the tractor beam emitters in the shuttle bay that we'll never ever see again. Mm-hmm. But I like that bringing in the shuttle. I think the shuttle prop is horrible. That was just, the Galileo from TOS looked so much better than that thing that looked like it was, came out of a not even the Playmates toy line. It looked like, but Riker walks into the shuttle bay and goes, NCC 1701D USS Enterprise.
Shuttlecraft 5. Yeah, he has to read off the entire registry number, the ship name, and then the shuttle number. Shuttlecraft 5.
Yeah. And we had all, I mean, I could understand if it was something like the audience, they wouldn't think the audience would get it, but it was clearly on the screen. You didn't need to have it read to you.
Yeah.
And it was just little stupid crap like that. That was one of the reasons I didn't care for the first 2 seasons. Now, I will agree with you. Measure of a Man is where the show really started to turn around.
Yeah.
I also liked another reason why I don't write off the first 2 seasons, and the second season especially. The episode Pen Pals.
Yeah. Is that in season 2?
Yeah, because it was Pulaski that wiped Sarjenko's memory.
Right, you're right. Yeah.
And that episode had the type of scene that you really don't see very much in later seasons. And I think when the writers were on their game for this type of scene, they were really on their game, which is that they're facing a problem. Picard says, "Okay, entire senior staff, come to my place. We're going to have some snacks and we're going to hash this out." Now, of course, Geordi, because it's how Geordi is the only one that gets food. Because Geordi loves to eat in these little scenes. And if there's scenes with food, he's going to eat it. And they talk over the situation from various angles. Different people giving their takes on it, and they're debating the issue. Do they step in? Do they work to calm down the seismic instability on the planet? Do they try to save these people? Do they not? Do they violate the Prime Directive? Do they ignore this girl that's asking for help, or is her asking reason enough to do it? Everyone has a different opinion, and everyone is throwing their lot into the conversation with actual thought to the different layers and the different facets of this debate, and not just a quick rote discussion of, okay, everyone say one thing that typifies your character and your approach to it. And when we get to Worf, say shoot it. I say we attack. No. Next. No, they're not doing that. Everyone has actual contributions to the conversation. Those scenes are great, and you got them early in the series, and you got them way less later on. Yeah. And second season had some good examples of that. But that's an example of season 2 being good. This season, I don't know that I think it's as bad as Rick thinks it is, but I do think this is much closer to the shades of gray end of the spectrum.
Well, I will say, okay, so this episode starts with one of the strangest cold opens I've ever seen on Star Trek. So Riker is cooking, and a few of the senior staff come in like they were invited to. I didn't get if this was supposed to be dinner, if this was supposed to be breakfast. He's making eggs, but Pulaski, I thought it was wine. I thought Pulaski brought wine, but you said it was beer.
She's ale.
Yeah, she said ale from wherever place.
And apparently Riker invited them all over for scrambled eggs and nothing else. I'm like, can I not get some toast? Maybe a slice of bacon or something with this? But
yeah, maybe some type of protein. But no, it's just and she says your omelets deserve no less.
That wasn't an omelet.
Not omelets.
That was scrambled eggs. That was it.
That was a big griddle of scrambled eggs.
I didn't see him season them. I didn't see any salt, nothing, just eggs.
And has anyone ever seen a person make scrambled eggs in a griddle like that?
That's the thing I was going to bring up. So obviously the set designers never thought that they needed to put a kitchenette in one of these crew quarters or something like that. But Riker's going on and on about how great his cooking is and everything. He's cooking scrambled eggs on a hot plate. You know, that's not what great cooks do.
On a dry hot plate, did you see those eggs burn into the pan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say a little Pam, maybe, some butter, olive oil, something.
And Pulaski, and then he starts talking about how he cooked a lot when he was a kid because it was just him and his dad and stuff. I thought it was weird that this episode is a Picard episode. It focuses on Picard, but we've got all this exposition at the beginning of Riker and his family dynamic and stuff. This was supposed to be the first part of a 2-parter. And we were supposed to find out that Q was the one messing around with time. And they ended up taking that and using it for the series finale and making this just its own episode. But also the next episode was the one where Riker's dad comes, and we find out that Pulaski used to date his dad, and they were kind of setting that stuff up. But we did hear Pulaski say, "Your dad used to cook?" And I was like, he never cooked for me when we were screwing around.
You found something that I never knew. I never had any clue this was supposed to be a two-parter.
Yeah, that I read that on IMDb, but like I said, Riker's going on and on about all the things that a chef needs, and he needs a stove for one thing. He also needs some seasonings because they start to eat the eggs, and nobody likes the eggs. Well, a chef's only as good as his ingredients. He's like, you didn't use any ingredients; you used an egg.
Yeah,
that was
one egg and hot. That's all you had is egg and hot.
And then, of course, Worf loves it. Have you ever noticed on the Next Generation that whenever they have like a banquet or somebody's eating in 10 Forward, they go out of their way to make the food look as weird as they can, which they didn't here. This is just eggs, but talking about eating on TNG brought this to mind. But there's always something with tentacles when they're eating. You always see somebody with a plate with like some garnish and some stuff, and there's always like a tentacle on their plate.
My favorite use of it is in the episode Genesis when Worf is tucking into a table full of food in 10 Forward. And as the waitress brings another plate of food to put on the table, and he's holding on to just a really big rubbery tentacle and like,
yeah.
Very funny. Very funny.
So once the shuttlecraft is brought into the Enterprise, the crew discovers that it's not only their shuttle, but there's an unconscious double of Picard in there. And Pulaski examines the unconscious Picard and finds that the brainwaves are out of phase. She says his heart is strong. This is another thing. Like I said, every time you use time travel in Star Trek, the rules are different. When somebody that travels through time, their brainwaves are not out of sync, and they're just lethargic and unconscious until they catch back up with their own time.
That's the thing. This is every time they do time travel, it's some different mechanism. We don't know. And this is something I will give TNG credit for, and they did it right away. And I always appreciated the ambiguous ending. I always like it. Well, all right, maybe not always, but I appreciate when things aren't always wrapped up in a nice little bow. And TNG was doing that from the get-go. So we have no idea why or how the Picard from 6 hours in the future managed to come back. And why everything was reversed. Again, Geordi is no slouch, and Data is a freaking machine, and it takes them way too long to figure out, reverse the polarity. I mean,
yeah. There's a lot
happening opposite. All right, switch it.
There's a lot of stuff with Data when they're sitting there trying to figure out why they can't get the shuttle to power up. Data sitting there looking all confused and everything. Like, it should not take Data as long as a human to figure stuff out, because he's not, he's an android. Yeah. He should be able to figure it out a lot quicker.
Once they make their first attempt and they see the result, and he says, it's almost as if whatever we tried had the opposite effect. The first thing that Data should be doing is, hey, turn that around.
Well, he does. He says reverse the polarity. Yeah, and then they still go, what is this?
Yeah, and it still takes them a while to get there. And
it's just like that Pulaski gives the other Picard a stimulant, and it has the opposite effect on him. It makes him more asleep or whatever.
Again, and something else that doesn't make sense, because time travel should change one's physiology like that. But, you just go with it, because at that point, they're not thinking through to come up with good rationalizations or explanations for what's happening. They just think, hey, wouldn't it be cool if she gave him something to wake up and it started to kill him?
Yeah.
That'd be weird, wouldn't it? Yeah, that'd be pretty weird. Let's do it. And then back in the shuttle bay, when not Worf, but when Geordi and Data are working on the shuttle, let's have Data get an itch. Because if you watch, he gets that confused look on his face, and he scratches an itch on his face.
Yeah.
Androids don't have itches.
He's mimicking human behavior.
Well, that pancake makeup can be pretty uncomfortable.
Right.
So Pulaski does end up waking up the future Picard, but he's disoriented, he's confused, and Geordi shows Picard the logs that he was able to retrieve, and shows it's all distorted, but it shows the shuttle leaving the dock with Riker standing there watching it, and then the Enterprise is destroyed, and Captain Picard puts out a personal log that everybody's dead and he's the only one that survived, and that's all that they were able to recover. So despite this, the crew decides to remain on course. Wherever we're going, that's the bad place, but we're going to keep going there.
Well, that was a part of the episode that did work, because they were like, look, if we start second guessing everything, we're never going to, they said, does stopping cause the destruction? Does going cause the destruction? Do we decide to go to port instead of going to starboard? And they said, screw this. We can't keep second guessing every move we make. We're just going to keep on course and deal with things as they come up.
They had, it was the same argument they had in All Good Things. They had that same conversation.
Yeah.
We can't start second guessing ourselves. Remember back in season 2 when we did this?
For all we know, changing our mind is what causes the problem. So
yeah,
it's a fair justification, and there were precious few moments of that in this episode.
Yeah. But also that scene at the end when Picard is about to take the shuttle out, Riker isn't in the room. So if it were a loop, I guess that goes towards Rick's argument that it's not a loop, because if it was a loop, you would think it would happen the same way every time.
True.
But I don't know. Pulaski theorizes that as they move closer to the time where the other Picard left, his internal body clock is going to realign. And when normal time intersects with the time he left, for that instant, he would begin to function normally, and there would be 2 Picards there. So Troy says that to her, they're both the same person. He's as much Picard as the other one is. This is something that I've noticed years ago. There's videos on YouTube. I know other people have had the same thought. I thought maybe I'm just a sicko for thinking this. That shot with Troy getting connected mentally with the other Picard is very unfortunate. The way it's framed, it looks like they're having sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not the only one that thought that.
Well, also with that outfit and that angle, she looked like she was just a head on top of a giant. It was just not in any way flattering. She almost looked Cardassian. It just looked like her neck started just below her ears.
But
this was still way overacted, Deanna.
Well, whoever was framing that shot, they knew what they were doing. Come on.
I'm pretty sure that I've seen shots of her in that scene, having the reaction. I think I've seen those compiled into humorous montages and supercuts of double entendres and unintentional sex jokes.
Yeah. Yeah, they show. I've been to one Star Trek convention. I went to one in the mid 90s here in Birmingham, and they showed a clip show of a bunch of stuff, and a lot of them was what you were saying there. It's scenes that are taken, and when you take it out of context, it looks like they're talking about something else. And they always show the scene with Wesley from that episode where he falls. He steps on the grass and he ends up having to be put to death or whatever.
About this long.
Yeah, he gets sentenced. It's about this long and it's this big around. All right, Riker.
I've seen, and hopefully you won't end up wanting to bleep this later, but I've seen another similar cut with Riker. This is from I think Tapestry. No, not Tapestry. From I think Pen Pals. It's Riker saying, "Ask yourself one thing: what would Picard do?" Cut to Picard in his ready room saying, "Come." And then immediately cut to Wesley getting hit in the face with a banana split.
That's someone with way too much time on their hands.
and that's just a moment in what I think is a 7-minute compilation of all these different jokes, one leading to another, and definitely focusing on LaForge and his lack of luck with ladies. But it's a funny video. Anyone who knows it, share it around. It's hilarious.
So Pulaski starts telling Troy that she's, I might have to take Picard from duty. It's like, that's kind of premature. He hasn't really done anything to warrant thinking that he's not capable of doing his job. He's worked his way through a lot more difficult situations than that. I think Pulaski just I really want to use this power that I've got. I can take the captain off the bridge if I want.
and my time is running out.
Yeah. So yeah, and Troy says, I don't think you're going to have to do that. And I was like, no, I don't think anybody's ever going to have to do that. But they show Picard in his ready room, and he's debating with Riker about why the other Picard traveled through time, bringing up the slingshot effect, that they used in the original series a few times. They talk about the Traveler. They talk about Paul Mannheim's experiments with time. And Riker suggests that Picard needs to suppress his natural tendencies and just basically, as Picard says, so you think I need to just sit down and shut up and see what happens. Well, I wasn't going to say it like that, but
you just did, so I don't have to. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because that is what he was trying to say. He was just calm yourself a little bit. Just sit down and let's figure out what's happening.
So this vortex opens up, and they're having a hard time staying out of it. They have to keep ramping the engines up more and more to keep from falling into it. And both Picards get hit by some kind of a energy beam, and Troy deduces that the energy wants Picard to leave the ship. No, that it wants Picard. So Picard says he has to leave the ship to distract this attention away from the Enterprise. Now realizing that that's what the plan was of the counterpart in the beginning. That's what started this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Picards kind of argue as to what to do. Now Pulaski said that the other Picard was going to start acting more normal. This guy's not acting normal. He's still, I have to do this. No, that's not going to work. I have to do this.
He is somewhat more coherent.
Yeah. Yeah. He's awake and he can walk,
but it's not like he's acting rationally.
Yeah.
He tried to escape the Enterprise and he watched it explode. And now he's in the past and he's like, oh, I need to do the exact same thing again. That's not reasonable.
Which is one of the reasons I really don't like this episode is I know that that the Picard we know doesn't exist yet. They're still figuring out the character, and he's still, the shut that damn noise off and married Picard.
Yeah.
But neither Picard in this episode is acting within the proper within character for Picard.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Picard, the other Picard says that he says that there's another option, but doesn't say what it is. And he has a reaction when there's a suggestion of going forward into the vortex. So Picard realizes that's the other option. So then he just kills the other Picard and then takes the ship through the vortex. Like, yeah, you didn't have to do that. You could have stunned him, or you could have just gone to the bridge. You could have disabled that shuttlecraft, whatever, But
it was quite an unnecessary. There can be only one.
Yeah.
Well, and this is where it's going to sound like I'm contradicting myself from earlier, but I'm not, because there's ambiguity and then there's just making shit happen to have it happen. You know, I didn't mind that we never found out what the anomaly was, but there was a lot that happened that should have had at least a conjecture. You know, like, where did that energy beam come from that came out of nowhere and was hitting both of them? You know, why did the thing have a, you know, single out Picard? You know, there were very important story elements to this episode that were not explained, and to me didn't feel like well, this is an unanswerable question. It just felt like we're not going to bother.
Yeah. And Chief O'Brien, all right. So to credit Chief O'Brien, he comes in and he sees dead Picard laying there, and he's like, he doesn't say anything, but he's like, why'd you kill him? I mean,
it's like, clean that up.
Did you have to do that? That really wasn't necessary. And then when they go through the vortex, the other Picard just disappears, and Chief O'Brien's like, hey, the other Picard's just gone. Like, good.
What do you mean gone?
Glad that's over with.
He just vanished. He is completely unbothered by this shit.
Yeah.
That is what a Starfleet war hero looks like. You go through the Battle of Setlik 3, nothing's going to phase you. It's like, did a dead body just vanish along with the shuttlecraft it was sitting in?
Hey, we learned.
When's lunch?
We learned on Lower Decks that Chief O'Brien is the most important character, the most important person in history.
Now, is he Chief O'Brien yet?
They've got him listed on IMDb as being Chief Miles O'Brien. So they called him Transporter Chief a lot. So
in my headcanon is that he was always Chief O'Brien. They just didn't. They didn't start calling him that. In the real world, the showrunners and the producers and the writers didn't decide that he was Chief O'Brien until later. But story-wise, he was always Chief O'Brien. We didn't learn that until later. And
then we have to find a way. We call him Chief O'Brien on TNG. We have to find a way to, when we put him on Deep Space Nine, we can still keep calling him Chief. So when he goes to Deep Space Nine, he's Chief of Operations.
It's one of my new acquisitions from Facebook.
Oh,
Chief is also a rank, Chief Petty Officer, which is what we find out he is in Brothers.
Yeah, when they decide, beginnings. It was Brothers.
Yeah, when Worf's parents come on board.
Yeah, that
was Brothers.
It's when Sergei points him out as a fellow enlisted man. And that was the first mention we ever got of enlisted personnel in Starfleet. I think it was the first time.
Well, there were crewmen, but there were no other ranks mentioned.
Yeah, but they made it special for him, saying you're enlisted man, Chief Petty Officer. We know what that is. Now they're starting to establish he's not a Starfleet officer, but he has a place in a
There's only a few times I remember.
Position.
There's only a few times that I remember it being called out that there are other people on board that are not, are working on board that are not Starfleet officers. Like, I think the drumhead. Yeah, there's a nurse in sickbay that's not enlisted is not a Starfleet officer, but is just a part of the medical staff or whatever.
Crewman. Rick had it right. Crewman Simon Tarsus.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that bothers me. But I've never really said, I don't think I've ever said it out loud. Now that I think about it, as a former military person, not everyone in the military is an officer, but everybody, when they talk about Star Trek, tends to just say that everybody on the show is a Starfleet officer. And like, no, they're not.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of them aren't, because you can't have an entire ship full of officers. There's got to be a buttload of non-coms running things.
Yeah, and I don't ever think about it. I always, because they make the distinction of you've got the medical track, you've got the engineering, security, and then you've got command. I always think of them as all being officers, and I know that only the ones that are in the command rank are like they're the ones that want to be captains and things like that. But then you've got so many people that just swap. It's like I'm a security officer.
Rutherford.
Now I'm the captain of a starship or something like that. It's
Mm-hmm.
like Worf went to he moved over to command when he went to Deep Space Nine. So
but officer
he was
necessarily...
in command in first season. He was in the command division.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then he moved to security division, then back to command division when he got to DS9. Same thing with Geordi. He was command division until second season when he moved to engineering and became the chief engineer.
Mm-hmm.
But officer doesn't necessarily mean command in the sense of aiming towards being a captain.
Right. It doesn't necessarily put you on the command track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like Scotty was a captain. He was captain of engineering. Captain is a rank as well as a position.
Yeah.
Well, at one point when TOS went into the movies, they made all of them. They were all captains. And Captain Sulu, Captain Chekhov, Captain Spock.
No, Chekhov was a commander.
Mm-hmm.
Uhura was a commander.
Mm-hmm.
Sulu was a captain because he was skipper of the Excelsior. Scotty was captain of engineering.
I thought somebody called Chekhov captain.
No, he called himself admiral when he had a head injury.
Well, yeah,
yeah. And maybe someone called him captain in Final Frontier when he was very briefly in command of the Enterprise.
Yeah, that could be.
That could be. I've only seen that movie twice, and I really wish I could put an ice pick through those engrams.
Yeah. Oh, well, come on, Rick. You don't want your pain taken away. You need that pain.
So at the end of the episode, Riker and Picard are talking, and Picard says, "They say if you travel far enough, you'll eventually meet yourself. Having experienced that, number one, it's not something I would care to repeat. Wait until Nemesis." You will be meeting yourself again one day. So I wrote down some trivia from the episode. Picard admits that he has trouble with waiting patiently, and Riker says that it's his Persian flaw. In traditional Persian carpet weaving, it was standard practice to deliberately put in a few mistakes because attempting perfection might offend God. If you make a mistake on purpose, is it a mistake?
I've always known. I didn't realize it was called the Persian flaw, but I've always heard that only Allah is allowed to be perfect, and then I was like, isn't that incredibly arrogant to think that you could be perfect? You didn't intentionally screw up.
Yeah, better be careful, or you might be God.
I accidentally became a god.
Oh, damn it! I made the perfect carpet.
Now I'm a god.
God.
I got a universe.
I think, Sean, to address your point, you say if you do it on purpose, is it a mistake? That I think calls for pointing out the delineation between a mistake and an imperfection.
Yeah, yeah.
If you intentionally put in a flaw, it's not a mistake, but it's still a flaw.
But it's a perfect flaw. Shuttle number 5 is the Elbaz, which Picard used to escape the Enterprise. It's named after Farouk Elbaz, whose name is sometimes hyphenated or split. He was a geologist who helped train the Apollo astronaut command module pilots to observe the moon from orbit. This was originally meant to be a 2-part story, with Q being the force behind the time anomaly. Elements of that were later used in All Good Things. And then Commander Riker hints at the strained relationship with his father. This is explored in depth in the next episode, which was the Icarus Factor, when Kyle Riker visits the Enterprise. Pulaski, and then
depth is an appropriate term, but
so I didn't hear you.
Said I'm not sure that in depth is an appropriate description of the next episode, but whatever.
Yeah.
When Picard and Riker are theorizing how the Elbaz shuttle arrived to them from 6 hours in the future, they talk about the slingshot time travel method, which was used a few times in The Next Generation and was the plot device in Star Trek 4 that we've already talked about. So, and that's it. That's all I got for this episode.
Was it Assignment Earth? Which episode of TOS where it just starts with them in the 20th century?
Assignment Earth.
That was Assignment Earth, yeah.
Okay.
They used it in The Naked Time. They used it in Tomorrow is Yesterday and Assignment Earth, and then Star Trek 4. So it was their go-to method of time travel.
But Assignment Earth and Star Trek 4 were the only ones where it happened on purpose.
Right.
True. Yeah, in Assignment Earth, they made it sound like we just do this all the time. Like, let's go back in time,
Just another day at the office. Hey, they told us to go back to the 1960s. So I'm like, whatever. I don't have anything else to do today.
Let's go back to the 60s. Why? Because that's when they had the good drugs.
Spock, did you score that weed before we leave?
Let's go back and get some. We'll just fly over Earth and just beam it straight to the cargo bay. How about that? All right. So that's pretty much going to do it for this episode. Make sure you guys are coming back frequently. We have new episodes of all of our podcasts coming out every week. You'll find them on our website at infinitepotato.com. Also want to remind you that we just launched our Patreon page. So go to patreon.com/infinitepotato. You'll find ways that you can help us meet the cost of putting these shows out there. Just a couple of bucks a month and you get some extra content. We just recorded an episode where we talk about Kingdom of the Spiders from 1977, which was something that Shatner did as a lark in the 70s. And you can listen to that. Just a pledge of $3 will get that wonderful content brought straight into your ear holes. So
I'm about to offer a tote bag.
Or this set of commemorative coins. Scott, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. And I suppose this is probably as good a time as any to admit that I did not rewatch this episode for this discussion. I just relied on all the dozens of viewings that I've had over the years.
Hey, if you've seen it enough, you just play it back in your own memory. Rick, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you. I'm sorry to say I did rewatch this episode for tonight, and that's part of why I drink.
I rewatched it just because I have not watched season 1 and 2 very much at all. Usually when I do a rewatch, I start at season 3 or 4. I went back and did a rewatch of the entire series about a year and a half or so ago. And when I was reading the synopsis of this episode, I couldn't remember ever watching it. Now watching it again, I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen this. But there you go. Okay.
And I'm going to go shoot myself.
Our the next time that you hear us on that Star Trek podcast, we will be talking about Yesterday's Enterprise. And until then, I know this much: we can't avoid the future.